Hey Warpugs, so today we're going to be checking out, you guys asked me to see another one of these. We checked out the last meal of an Iceman. That was awesome, but today we're checking out something that at least one of you has thought about in the last 20 minutes. What did Romans drink? This, well, it's not really a drink, it's a condiment. So this is called Garum. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but we're going to find out from Max here. This is Cooking History with Max Miller. You guys, after I checked out the last meal of the Iceman, I can't remember the name of the guy's name for the love of money, but they found him in the Alps, and they managed to find out what was in his stomach, and this guy put that meal back together. So we got to see what he ate the last time, like right before he passed on. But this is about a condiment. So I'm actually kind of interested to see, because I know I ate ranch on everything. I'm wondering what the Romans ate on everything. You know, it's kind of like Frank's Red Hot. I put that on everything. Guys, the last time we saw him, it was really educational. It was really interesting. It's amazing to see how cultures lived when they didn't have all the conveniences we do now. And it's a bit of an eye-opener. It's also a good bit humbling. And I think that modern society could do with some humbling in this day and age. So, with that being said, let's go. Tasting History with Max Miller. I believe that's it. Yes, it is. Let's jump into it. All links are in the description below. Let's go.
Leave a barrel of dead fish out in the hot Mediterranean sun for 2 months, and you are going to have a rancid, putrid mess.
Okay.
But leave a barrel of dead fish and salt out in the hot Mediterranean sun for 2 months, and you're going to have one of ancient Rome's most prized and oft-used condiments, garum. So today I'm going to teach you how to make your own garum at home in a lot less than 2 months and without offending your neighbors.
Cool.
So smash that like button the way Caesar smashed Pompey's army at the Battle of Pharsalus, and get ready to learn about garum.
Let's go.
This time on Tasting History.
This is such a cool show. This is such a cool thing.
Garum, sometimes called liquamen, is fermented fish sauce. And before you say, ew, Rome, gross, you have to realize that we still have fermented fish sauces with us today.
We do.
Worcestershire sauce is made with fermented anchovies, and different varieties of fermented fish sauce can be found throughout cuisines in East Asia.
When I found out how Worcestershire sauce is made, the first thing I did was swear off Worcestershire sauce. And then I wanted Worcestershire sauce.
In Thailand, Nuoc Mam in Vietnam, and Ek Jot from Korea, just to name a few. And I am apologizing for my pronunciation of probably all of those sauces.
You're not the only one, guy.
In the small fishing village of Cetara in Campania, Italy, they make something called colatura di alici, which translates to anchovy drippings, and is probably a direct descendant of garum.
Okay.
If you don't want to make your own garum, you can go ahead and use this as a good substitute. I will put a link in the description where you can find some.
Okay.
But since Tasting History is all about trying to recreate the dishes of the past rather than just buy their modern cousins, I decided to make my own garum.
Let's
go. Now, when I ventured down this fool's path, I assumed it would take me a couple months because the traditional way of making garum, like the ancient Romans did, would be to take a large vessel, put a layer of whole fish, then a layer of herbs, and then a thick layer of salt about 2 fingers thick, and then just layer that up all the way until you fill the entire vessel.
Okay.
Put a stopper in it and set it out in the sun for 2 months, every once in a while kind of plunging it and mixing up all of the juices.
Yummy.
And I was going to do this for you, the viewer,
I
who
appreciate
I care for
that
so much. But then a friend of mine who had ventured to Laos told me about a run-in he had with the factories that make their fermented fish sauce. And he basically said, you cannot do that living in a condo surrounded by neighbors. They would probably call the cops thinking that there was a dead body over here. So I was disheartened, but I kept up my research into Roman cuisine anyway. And I'm so glad that I did.
Sweet.
Because I found out that making garum is covered extensively in a work called the Geoponica, which dates from the 10th century and is from Byzantium, which is the Eastern Roman Empire. And it's said that it's based on a 6th century Latin treatise. Now, it actually mentions 5 different recipes for garum.
Okay.
And some of them have wine, some of them have different fish, different ways of preparing the garum. But I'm going to read you 2 just to spare you from reading all 5. The best garum, called Himation, is made as follows. Take the entrails of tunny fish and its gills, juice and blood, and sufficient salt sprinkled on. Leave it in a vessel for 2 months at most.
At most.
Then pierce the vessel and the garum, called Himation, will flow out. Kind of reminds me of that little spigot on the bottom of our cold brew jar.
Right.
And I'm guessing that just like the cold brew, a tall ice glass of garum in the morning will really get you going.
Or get you in the hospital, one of the two, if you prepare it wrong.
But it's this next recipe that rekindled my hope of making my own garum at home. Because clearly the author of the Geoponica knew that sometimes you just can't wait for your fish juice fix.
Yeah.
If you wish to use the garum at once, i.e. not expose it to the sun, but boil it, make it in the following manner. Take brine and test its strength by throwing an egg into it to see if it floats.
Okay.
If it sinks, it does not contain enough salt. Put the fish into the brine in a new earthenware pot, add oregano, put it on the fire until it boils, i.e. until it begins to reduce. Some people also add defrutum. Let it cool and strain it 2 or 3 times until the liquid is clear. Seal and store it away. Now, defrutum is a syrup that's made from reducing must, which is freshly crushed grape juice with the stems, seeds, and skins in there. And I don't have any of that right now, so I decided not to use it, and that's okay because he does say some people use defrutum, and I ain't some people.
We're better than that.
So with the Geoponica giving us full permission to make quick garum, let's do it. First, you'll need about 2 quarts of water.
Okay.
Then, a ton of sea salt. Probably close to a pound. It's going to depend on different things like the salt, the water, and the temperature of it, but he gives us instructions on how to tell when it's ready, so we will do that with the egg later on.
It is so... Like, I actually like cooking. I actually do like cooking. I don't have... I'm not skilled at it, but there are some dishes I know how to make. In fact, the hospitaler has this one particular thing that she wants me to make as soon as when she's coming back into town, and that's a crock pot dish, and I can do a crock pot. If you can't do a crock pot, just look up a recipe online. I guarantee you'll have some fun with it.
Then some dried oregano. I went with 2 heaping teaspoons. Then, if you want, you can add some defrutum if you have it, or have must that you can reduce. I'm not going to, 1, because I don't have it, and 2, because I want the star of the dish, the fish, to really shine through. But you can also use honey. There are records of honey being used or other kind of sweet things, so go ahead.
Today I was out and I should have bought honey. I did not buy honey, and I'm mad at myself because when he said it, I literally was out shopping about 10 hours ago and I did not buy honey, and now I'm kicking myself.
And use it if you want. Then you'll need about 2 pounds of small whole fish. You can use mackerel or sardines or anchovies or herring, anything that is an oily fish. Now they also use tuna, as in that first recipe, the tunny fish, but I mean, how much are you making? A tuna is like this big. So
right.
I'd stick with mackerel at most, because even a mackerel is kind of big. Lastly, you'll need that egg that I mentioned, but that's more of a tool rather than an ingredient.
Okay.
So first, we make our brine. Go ahead and start adding salt to the water. I'd start with about 400 grams at first and then work your way up. I ended up using just over 400 grams. I ended up switching pots because the large pot is actually better for making this, but the small pot was better for testing it with the egg because the large pot, the egg wasn't even covered, so it couldn't tell. But mix it in, and every once in a while, put the egg in there, and once it floats, stop adding salt.
You're good.
Now, if you end up adding too much salt, that's okay. It's just gonna fall to the bottom, not a huge
Anyway,
deal.
yeah.
Then the recipe says to add the fish to the brine in a fresh earthenware pot. I don't have that, so I ended up using a stock pot. So add the whole fish to the water and the oregano, and stir everything together. Then it's time to boil it. So put the pot over high heat and let the fire do its work.
Yay.
You're gonna boil it for between 30 and 40 minutes, and every 10 minutes, go ahead and kind of give that fish a mashing with your spoon just to break it up. Should break up after the first 10. So as your house fills with the scent of boiling fish,
yeah.
My cat loved it, by the way, I'm going to show you why garum was such a popular condiment in ancient Rome.
Cool beans. Yes.
Noble garum. Lordly Garum.
Yes.
The taste of the sea.
Yes.
There was no end to the accolades that ancient writers put on garum. Pliny the Elder called it choice liquor, and his favorite was garum sociorum, often translated as garum of comrades. It was made of mackerel and came from southern Spain, and he said that scarcely any other liquid except perfume has become more highly valued. And while not all garum enjoyed such
And remember, people stank back in the day, so perfume was nice.
a price tag, it did become quite the booming business in the Roman Empire. It's thought that garum started in Greece with a sauce called gyros, probably made from a fish called gyros, which is the Netflix remake of a fish called Wanda. But when Rome took over Greece,
Netflix remakes suck.
the gyros took over Rome and became garum. See, the Romans didn't really salt their food, so instead, in pretty much every recipe that we have from antiquity, they use garum to impart sodium to their dishes. And in doing so, it also gave a certain umami flavor, which the Romans must have loved. Because in the most famous collection of Roman recipes that we have, De Re Coquinaria, nearly every recipe uses it, though by then it was called liquamen, but that is the story for another day.
Okay.
Not surprisingly, it was used in fish dishes and meat dishes and in most of the sauces, but it also found its way into vegetable dishes and fruit dishes and used as a salad dressing and even in some of the dulcia recipes or sweets.
I kind of find it amazing that they would not. I don't find it amazing. I find it odd. It's not amazing to me. It's odd. Why wouldn't they use just regular salt? Why? Because, anybody at that time period would have known that you could basically evaporate seawater and get salt out of it, and it enhanced dishes. I wonder why some cultures didn't do that when that was such, and especially like the Romans. I never expected to hear that. It just seems really, really odd to me because they had to have known. They 100% had to have known. There was no way they didn't know. So the question just goes back to why wouldn't they have just done it like that?
Because fish sauce in dessert. What could go wrong? And it wasn't just used as flavoring, because it was quite the cure-all if Galen had anything to say about it.
Okay.
Now, you might remember Galen from the episode on the Black Plague cures, which I'll put down in the description below.
Black Plague cures, there were thousands of them, and not a single damn one worked.
Galen thought that foods controlled the humors in your body, which controlled your health.
And to be quite honest with you, he was onto something with that. He wasn't all the way there, but he was onto something. That's why I love the scientific method as it stands today, because he was actually onto something. He wasn't quite there, but he was onto something with that.
Every food had some degree of hotness, dryness, coldness, or wetness, and garum was no exception. He says that garum has the considerable capacity for heat and dryness, and on account of this, some doctors treat putrefying ulcers with it, and inject it into people with dysentery and sciatica. Now, if you take anything away from this video, it should be that despite what Galen says, you should never, ever inject anyone with fermented fish sauce.
Yeah.
Ever. Also,
Ever.
while in one writing, Galen says that it's a treatment for diarrhea, in another, he says it's a treatment for constipation. So, just kind of seems like wacky Galen's miracle tonic. I don't trust this Galen guy.
The reason I say he was onto something is because he was onto a fundamental truth about nutrition. And if they made assumptions about what they knew, and they were doing the best that they could. They did not have an ironed out method for determining how they were going to test things yet, things like that. But that's the thing I love about the scientific method, because even then you could see they were trying to get these things figured out, get health figured out, get all these things figured out. They just didn't have they didn't have the same kind of methodology that we do today. But he was definitely onto something with that. That was primitive nutritionalism.
Pliny the Elder, who I usually think of as a little bit more reputable, says that it was a good treatment for dog bites and earaches, and if you had stomach troubles, then the best cure was to eat African snails marinated in garum. Oh,
Okay.
but it needs to be an odd number of snails.
An odd
'cause
number, definitely.
That's a thing. But while it was medicinal to some, others thought that the condiment exacerbated gout, caused melancholy, and destroyed your teeth. So I don't know who to believe.
Okay.
But regardless, the fact that it was in almost every Roman dish and it was used as medicine means that it had become quite the precious commodity by the time the empire took off. Garum factories were sprouting up all around the Mediterranean. In Judea,
wow.
they made a kosher version for the Jewish population, and in Pompeii, it was known as Gariflos Scombri, or the flower of garum. Now, production centers tended to be, of course, on the coast, because plenty of salt, and moving fish, probably expensive, but also because the fish had to be very fresh. The poet Martial said, "Accept this exquisite garum, a precious gift made with the first blood spilled from a living mackerel." But as the empire's greed for garum grew, coastal towns had to say, "Hold your horses, this stuff stinks." There was a Byzantine regulation from the Hexabiblos that stated that any new garum factories needed to be built 3 stades away from any village or town. It's about 3/8 of a mile. And I'm not even sure that that would be enough. So yeah, lovely as the flavor might be, there were some that had less than great things to say about it.
It's just one of those things that we talk about this kind of crap often. If you knew how the stuff was made, you never want to eat it. That is true for half of the stuff that we eat nowadays, and it's even more true for back then.
In an Epicurean tirade, Seneca the Younger said, "What? Do you not think that the so-called sauce from the provinces, the costly extract of poisonous fish, burns up the stomach with its salted putrefaction? What? Do you not judge that the corrupted dishes which a man swallows, almost burning from the kitchen fire, are quenched in the digestive system without doing harm? How repulsive, then, and how unhealthy are their belchings, and how disgusted men are with themselves when they breathe forth the fumes of yesterday's debauch.
Dude.
You may be sure that their food is not being digested, but is rotting."
Seneca, just say you don't like it and move on. There's no need to be this angry about a food product. Like, I don't like Twinkies. I don't sit there and start throwing shade at people in the parking lot of a Maverick because they want to eat a Twinkie. That is reductive. I didn't start screaming at, Woody Harrelson in that zombie movie he made because he wanted to go after Twinkies. Even though I think they're one of the worst things I've ever tasted. Like, just say you don't like it and move on, my guy.
Not exactly commercial copy for garum there.
No.
And even Pliny the Elder and Martial had trouble making up their mind about how they really felt about garum. Martial once commended a young man for making romantic advances toward a woman who had already had 6 helpings of the stuff that night, and Pliny the Elder, who had called it proud sauce and exquisite liquor, also described garum as the guts of fish and other parts that would otherwise be considered refuse, so that garum is really the secretion of putrefying matter. And he's kind of right, but to be pedantic, it is not putrid, but rather fermented. With the salt there to stop putrefaction, the breakdown actually comes from enzymes in the fish's own digestive system, so that essentially it's digesting itself over the period of several months. Kind of like the Sarlacc pit.
Oh!
Anyway, let's get back to our own Sarlacc pit in the kitchen.
Let's do it.
So once the fish has boiled for 30 to 40 minutes,
Yummy.
take it off the heat and let it cool. Then pour it through a colander.
Clearly,
now it says
didn't
to strain it 2 or 3 times. I ended up doing it like 7 times, making a huge mess while doing it because
I was going to ask if he was going to use cheesecloth because that's what they would have used back then.
started with cheesecloth. I wouldn't do that. It's just not enough.
Oh, okay.
The best thing that I actually used was a paper towel and then a tea towel. So here is my bottle of garum, a nice kind of pale yellow color. Also, if you are bottling this, because it's going to last forever due to the high salt content, but you do need to make sure that the bottles have been sterilized. So, you know, boil those bottles.
Yes.
Now, usually this is where I would taste the food that we've made, so I would just take a swig of this. But if you've ever taken the Latin course from Duolingo, as we all have, one of the first things you learn is garum non bibis, or you do not drink garum.
Okay.
But I really want to try it in its pure form before I add it to another dish, and luckily Pliny the Elder says that if you dilute it to the color of honey wine, you can go ahead and drink it. So before I try it, I've diluted a glass here. I'm going to first tell you how it smells in its purest form. So, fishy.
A little bit fishy?
Smells very fishy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to try this in the name of science.
In the name of science.
Before I do, I want to let you know that next week I'm actually going to use the garum for its intended purpose, which is as an ingredient. I'm going to be making mitulis, or mussels, as described in the De Re Coquinaria by Apicius, and that's what we'll be talking about. So make sure to hit that notification bell when you subscribe so you'll be notified when that comes out. Okay, enough stalling. Here we go. Garum. Oh, I feel like that episode of
Work Up the Courage, my guy. Work up the courage. It's okay. We're here for you.
Friends, where Ross is going to drink the fat. It's just a vanilla milkshake with pieces of fish in it. There aren't actually pieces of fish.
No,
it's been well strained. But okay, here we go. Enough.
Let's go.
So,
alarm.
Whoever said that it was the taste of the sea is right. It tastes like the ocean. It's not actually as fishy as I thought. It's more of just like salt watery. It tastes like the ocean. I think that it actually might be a very nice ingredient. That said, I'm not going to be putting it on a salad, and I'm definitely not going to be finishing this glass. So, yeah. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and I will see you next time on Tasting History.
You know what? This is actually an interesting... This is... Stuff like this is just really cool to me. This is on the level, well, not on the same like level of outrageousness, but this channel and Kentucky Ballistics remind me of each other in a strange kind of way. And you might be listening to that going, how in the world does this remind you of Kentucky Ballistics? Well, very simply put, this guy is going out, finding out about these dishes, finding out everything about them, and then just giving them a shot. And it's kind of like the way that Scott does over at Kentucky Ballistics, where he just does things. This guy just does things. And while Scott does his with high caliber munitions, this guy does his in a kitchen. And that is cool to me. Okay, this kind of stuff is just massively interesting to me. I've seen 3 things from him so far, and each one of them has just been, well, outrageously enjoyable to me. 1, I'm learning something about the Romans that I simply did not know. 2, as somebody who makes, like, I cook, you know, I don't have nearly the tools that he does. I'm not nearly as accurate as he is, but I do cook myself, and I do know how to cook. Seeing stuff like this is absolutely amazing, seeing how people actually did their stuff. And the big one for me in all of this is he researches the history behind it and tells you. He just doesn't make the dish. He lets you know about it, what they thought about it, everything. Like I still say Seneca needs to calm down. Okay, he just needs to chill out. You know, get him. Just find something else that you want to eat, my guy. There's berries everywhere. There's peach trees, my guy. But with all that said, Warpugs, this is a cool channel. This is an absolutely amazing channel. I don't think I'm going to try Garum anytime in the near future. But I do think I want to see more stuff like this. Because this is awesome. This is awesome. Channels like this are the reason that YouTube exists. Because if not for this channel, if not for YouTube, I would not know what Garum was. Much less how they made it. And much less how much I never want to try it now. Until one day that I find myself in a restaurant where they actually serve real Garum and I decide to give it a shot. War Pugs, Tasting History of the Max Miller. All links are going to be in the description down below. Please go check them out. And by the way, join as a member of Patreon for early access. Pick yourself up a shirt. I'm going to catch you guys next time. Making sauce with fish guts. If I didn't already know about Worcestershire sauce and hadn't already had my several meals that I thought were delicious ruined and then were tasty again, I wouldn't know what to say about it. But there you go, War Pugs. Fish sauce.